Hello everybody, welcome back. Let's have a look at Bitcoin and see what's going to happen this weekend then. Ethereum as well, bit of an overview of the market. And I'm just going to highlight Zcash. Bit random, I know, but I am looking for a large move on Zcash. But we'll start with thinking about Bitcoin and if we're going to get a bit of a drop or a bit of a pullback. That should allow us to pick up any kind of altcoin or just back into Bitcoin if that's your bag. I think that the dips should be still getting bought basically. Given that the Dixie is still breaking out, but it's having a bit of a chill out period. Stocks again holding and closed above 5,000. That's the S&P obviously, and things still looking, I suppose, temporarily bullish. But in the immediate term, as in like today, this weekend, we might be seeing a bit of a deeper pullback, a change of structure on the 4 hour at least. Now, we could, and I really mean it, we could bounce from this exact level. So whatever your risk tolerance is, or however snappy your stop losses and risk management is, this very second is an opportunity, although it might not be the one that works out. This blue line represents basically a very significant area on the chart. You can see that we've used it mostly as support for the last few days. Bit of resistance, reclaimed, basically support. Now, almost every single candle body more or less closing above it. And at the moment, for the first time since we got there, the Bollinger Band of the 4 hourly has now propped up against it. And if we look at the 4 hourly after this last portion of the run from 42, we used it as a launch pad here and a launch pad here. And so we're back at it again, but also at this major resistance stroke support. 51,800. So it is kind of a big deal being at this exact point right now. So if you're thinking about that and you're thinking about how that's going to cross over to altcoins, we'll have a look at Ethereum, see what Ethereum's doing. Ethereum's also umming and ahhing around the same kind of area on the 4 hourly. So this is a little messier because we did retest it here, and the 21 exponential is where we've more or less based from and bounced from, and then use the 10 after that. So yeah, the Bollinger Band itself is something, and we're sort of hanging around that area right now. That's basically, we'll call it 2,800, just to round up the numbers a bit. And the 21 exponential is at 2,761, so not much between it. So there's opportunity at this moment in time for a potential bounce, but if we were to lose it, if we were to lose these areas, the next one down from exactly where we are right now for Ethereum would be basically about a 4.3% drop around 2,660. Let's have a look at momentum on this one. So momentum's sort of fading away a little bit, so maybe a deeper drop is required. And for whatever reason, if this gets lost, we've got a nice horizontal here at 22,536, and then the golden cross retest at the bottom end around 2,460. The same deal really for Bitcoin, to be honest with you. We'll be looking for 49,800 to be the next major area of support. If we were to start digging deeper, and if we lose that, then yeah, we've got a nice horizontal here at 46,600. It'd be surprising to see that happen over the weekend, although it is on the, it's not out of the question. We can't say that won't happen, and that is a possibility, but it's up to you. So for me, like trading these markets at this point in time, like I said yesterday, we did the Patreon last night, and just in general, altcoins are creating setups left, right, and center. They're all over the place. Alt setups are rife, but market can pull back based on what Bitcoin wants to do, and Bitcoin being the dominant force, we know that altcoins will drop regardless of whatever setup they've got. But if they drop into major supports like golden cross retest, which many of them are doing, so they're quite early on in their I suppose their short term setups, as in their 4 hourlies look like they are wanting to begin another run. And a lot of the dailies have lost areas, but still maintain golden crosses as well. So you'll be looking for those to V-shape recover to the areas that were lost. You'll have to look at your individual charts for whatever reason, but that's the way I'm looking at altcoins. So I'm seeing altcoins as an opportunity to buy the dip on, but the dip will be given to us by Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so long as they can maintain these moving averages and these horizontals, the dips probably would be better to be bought in the altcoins that have the good setups. And to be fair with you, most of them do, but then they don't all. So no altcoin is created equal. So that doesn't mean buy the absolute everything altcoin dip, not at all. It's buy the altcoins that show strength of trend dip, which again is most of them, but it's not all of them. So you do have to think about what it is that you're buying if you're going to buy anything at all. So that said, there is this portion of the chart now where we could actually start to move from. So what I suppose the best thing to do when you have a setup like this, which is offering some kind of opportunity at this moment in time, although it's not perfect, you take yourself to a shorter term time frame, like an hourly, to see what's going on there. So for Bitcoin's hourly, the Bollinger Bands are pinching quite tightly, so there is a larger move pending, and if this move does drop, we'll be looking to more or less the same kind of level, 49,600. That's where the 1 hourly and the 4 hourly kind of point to this one area. So that's the 1 hourly 200 exponential, and I believe it was the 50 exponential on the 4 hourly, more or less around the same kind of area. Yeah, so that would be the dip, like a larger dip. You might see a wick down to there and a decent bounce, and if the bounce takes place, your target really is the area that's lost, just in case we see a lower high. It might be the start of a consolidation, but I would imagine that a dip like that brings the altcoins down more, and the bounce on the altcoins would be more as well. So there is opportunity to buy into the dips for altcoins, depending on the altcoin that you're buying. Now, one of the ones that I am going to highlight here is Zcash, which is not the pillar of strength. Actually, when you compare it to other altcoins, this isn't really even began a trend. It's still more or less trying to recover from losing that $32,000 zone, and basically got knocked down the stairs. And then when the whole Monero thing happened, Zcash kind of got a little bit hurt through association with that, just because it's privacy token, and I suppose maybe its days are numbered. I don't think that Zcash is used as frequently on the darknet, or if it is at all, but through association with its privacy, it's probably under a bit of scrutiny. People are assuming maybe that this is next on the delisting from Binance, but we'll have to see. But obviously that concept that might happen adds more risk to this chart. But I think what we're looking at here is a nice sort of bounce brewing, and a bounce that could take us to areas lost. My personal target is around between 26 and 27, 200 simple and exponential, which is not a bad move at all, to be fair. I bought into this yesterday, so we'll be looking for a roughly around a 20 to 25% move on this, which you can't complain about for a trade. So at the moment we're battling around with this, it's a 200, it's a 50 exponential moving average on a daily, really. So it's all part of a death cross retest. But given the overall vibe I've got on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and the strength on altcoins in general, I think this one will start to trend up and make its way all the way up to the death cross retest, where I'd be looking to exit this. I wouldn't be looking to hold this, to get back up to where it came from, because this isn't an uptrend. This is just what I believe to be a decent bounce and a death cross retest, and then a rejection from that. So opportunity in this coin, definitely. Now, one other chart I'm just going to show you, just as there's a lot of altcoins that look like this, for instance, right? So Algorand, again, as you all know, I quite like a bit of Algorand. And this is just another example of what most altcoins look like, which is not like Zcash. So we've had the run. So this is like, I suppose, what we're looking to expect from Zcash anyway. So from the 9 up to the 13. So death cross retest. Algorand reclaims that and carried on for a run, created golden crosses on simples and exponentials, retested those now and used it as a building block to accumulate from, and is now going on for a further run. A lot of altcoins look like this. They have their completed golden crosses and strength of trend. They've consolidated into them, and now they're looking to V-shape recover. So in the for Algorand, really, you've got these two areas. You've got the first area being around 22, and then the second area being the candle body highs around 24. So that's what most altcoins look like, which begs the question, should we really buy the dip on these? Because if that's the case, that dip could take us down to any one of these moving averages. Arguably, you'd like to see something like Algorand pull back no deeper than a Bollinger Band Center, which is about 17 cents, and then from 17 cents bounce and continue up to complete the V-shaped recovery between 22 and 24. So obviously Zcash is not like that, it's a different setup. These setups are slightly better. Most other altcoins that we looked at, I suppose, last night on the Patreon live stream do have this kind of setup. And if that's the case, then you'd be looking and hoping for a pullback to a decent area, and then your recovery in the form of Algorand, at least anyway, is going to be between 26 and 40%, roughly, give or take, from the pullback area. That's if we get a pullback at all. Based on what we see with Bitcoin, I think a pullback is actually quite likely in the short term, and that pullback would be to the tune of roughly, give or take, about 4%. So expect at least 4% on your altcoin, because obviously altcoins are more likely to emphasize any kind of pullback, as they are more likely to spring higher, so they give more back. So you lose more, but you gain more depending on your entry. So on the hourly for Algorand points to 18, but we've recognized that on the daily, a deeper dive into that Bollinger Band Center would be more like a 10. That's makes perfect sense, really. Most time altcoins outperform Bitcoin on the way down. So yeah, like I said, there is definitely opportunity in altcoins. You still have to be patient, and your risk management has to be tight. But I'll be looking at this again. Like, the main thing to think about is the market as a whole. What's Bitcoin doing? Because Bitcoin drives the market. But if we look at something like Algorand and take this on face value, like you would want to do with most other altcoins, you'd look at this and go, all right, okay. So what we've had is the first move up, golden cross, strength of trend. Then you've had the peak. Then you've had the consolidation. We've proven that the support on the 200 exponential is real, and that is actually really good to see that. That goes up, we move up to a V-shaped recovery. And then we might even go higher. You would expect a V-shaped recovery most of the time with a setup like this. So that would take you to at least the 22, which again is significant, if not the full recovery to 24. But a pullback, absolutely perfectly acceptable. And the risk to reward, again, depending on where you take the trade. If you bought it now, you still look for a 10% pullback before you end up with a potential 25% gain. So at this very moment in time, the risk to reward's not amazing. I mean, it's okay. The rewards outperform, they outweigh the risk, but still, you wouldn't really want to buy into an area which potentially can pull back to the tune of 10%. But if we did pull back 10%, it would be a buy the dip, and that would be much better risk to reward, because really at that stage there, you'd be looking for this area to get tagged at best 6%, and if you lose that, obviously it's a failed trade, completely invalidated. But the gains would be significant and much better. And again, most altcoins, I wouldn't say most, but most of the ones we looked at last night, which has got to be a good maybe 30 or 40 altcoins, most of them had a similar setup to this. And so I would expect a similar behavior for most altcoins. So allow Bitcoin to pull back, give us that 4.5%. Maybe we get the 10% on the altcoins. You buy the dip on the 10%, and you start to target areas on the chart that you have basically mapped out for yourself, whether it's a V-shaped recovery or just a decent bounce. In the case of Algorand, decent bounce. In the case of Zcash, it would be a bounce, but not any kind of moon mission. So it's a tradable market, definitely, but not one that I would sell my kidneys for. I would want to make sure that I still have plenty of cash available for when a consolidation kicks in much later on down the line this year, which it will happen. But at the moment, the market is continuing to maintain its bullish position and still wants to go up. But I would not at all be surprised to see a more deeper pullback for Bitcoin over this weekend. That's how it looks right now. But if we don't get it and we do start to move up immediately, just to reiterate, it would happen from this exact area. So, what is your risk tolerance? That's what you got to ask yourself. What is your risk tolerance? Are you willing to take a bet that we still keep going up from this point forward? This is an area that you would expect to see some kind of move, but given the plentiful bearish divergence, I think it does want to have a deeper pullback, and my best guess was that it won't go any deeper than 49,700, we'll call it. I don't think it'll go any deeper than that. later on down the line, believe me, the correction is much deeper. Because we're looking at this on a weekly, we've still got the bearish divergence forming on the money flow index. We had the same thing over here. We had a big peak, and again for Bitcoin, the peak it would have been this candle body here around 39.40. We had a pullback, and then we went up, still completing the bearish divergence, bearish divergence, bearish divergence, bearish divergence, dead. Well, not dead, but that's an absolute possibility, and probably the most likely scenario is that we are going to see something similar to this later. Whether it comes straight down like that is a different story. I think the more we go up, the more likely it is that we do have a crash or a dump like that. I was more into the idea of something like this happening. I think if we just keep rallying in the face of the divergence, it's more likely that there will just be a chaotic dump afterwards. But at the moment the market is different, slightly different than it's ever been before. The whole ETF scenario is slightly different. We've got the halving creeping around the corner, so there's a lot of reason for it to meander in this area. I'm actually quite surprised at its strength, pleasantly surprised obviously, but I'm surprised at its strength. But some people are now talking, it's going to new all-time highs, and then $100,000 after that. And when you hear people talk like that, it's often a bit of a problem for me anyway. There's nothing worse than highlighting ridiculous targets. I mean, let's face it, they're not particularly ridiculous, but they're not founded on this chart. They're not really based around what we can see. They're just round numbers to grab people's attention, really. You've got to look at, if anything, the way I trade based around strength of trend and momentum. And the momentum is fading, but the trend is increasing, which makes it look more parabolic at this stage, defying the momentum, which usually ends in tears, unfortunately. So the higher we go, the more risk. Obviously, that's the nature of all charts. But there are signs on this weekly to say, I'll be very surprised to see us break above like 57.5. Although it can happen. Again, emotions is what drives these charts higher, rather than the technicals at this point. That's what parabolic moves up are. That's what giant, big, chaotic crashing down is. It's an emotional response to anything, and so that's what's happening right now. These candles are driven by emotions, the fear of missing out, pump, 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 pump. Even though the chart is saying, just be very worried about what's going to happen a little bit later on down the line, because it could easily just go, and then we could see one of those big moves. Maybe a move all the way from 57 down to like 45, and maybe even down into the 30s. That can happen. Imagine it being like I'll tell you what it's a bit like. It's about like tuning a guitar. You get a guitar string, you're tightening it up, Oh, it can go higher, 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 and then it snaps. It's kind of what's going to happen if we do just keep going on with this parabolic move. But trying to negotiate or spot a particular top on it, I think at this point is kind of unrealistic. We are seeing a lack or fading of momentum on the 4-hourly, which means short term, more likely to see a bit of a pullback, but then that'll get bought up because the emotions will allow for that. And again, stock's still good. Dixie relatively stable for the moment. So yeah, I'm in favour of buying the dips, and I'll be buying the dips in altcoins. And I don't know what your plan would be, but those dips that I buy are really small, short-term trades. They're not me going in for the long run. One thing I showed yesterday, actually, in the Patreon live stream, and I'll leave it with you here, is that this is not the parabolic alt season that ends the cycle. That's not what I'm believing we're looking at here. This is just a continuation of the alt season that we've had since October, really. Which, again, that was really good. On this channel, we got in more or less at the beginning of that, when no one wanted the altcoins. Now everybody wants them, and it kind of makes it a little bit of a problem. But most years, you do get an alt season. Most years, there is some form of alt season. And I believe that the majority of the alt season was between September and December last year. And anything we get now is a bonus. And I think this is a good example of what the market is doing right now for alts, or is about to do. So we've had this portion of the run, we've had a decent run, and there'll be another explosion. Based on what we see, it looks like there'll be another explosion in altcoins, but it's not the one that ends the cycle. This is the one that ends the cycle. So this is part of that. We'll get a big move up and then a consolidation. I think that's what's going to happen. So this is why I'm saying be very careful with buying the altcoins. Don't stay in them for too long, because I expect a consolidation to kick in, and you don't want to be buying anywhere near a top on altcoins, especially at this portion of the cycle. And I think this is a good idea of where we are within the cycle. We're seeing an alt move, and then it'll get faded and have a retrace. Because if Bitcoin wants to retrace to the tune of 30, 40, maybe even more percent, then obviously you'd expect a full retrace on most of these altcoins. So this is what's happening right now. So if you choose to sit on the fence for altcoins right now, or in the market in general, and I'm largely on the fence, I'm playing at best with about 20% of my cash. I'm keeping 80% of the gains I've made last year safe and sound. Don't really want to deploy those at this portion of the market. Quite happy with all the gains that were made last year and the profit that's made, because my expectation is that wherever we are in this portion of the market for altcoins, and again, we could see an explosion, move back up, we could easily see another 20, 40, 50% on altcoins, no problem at all. It's not the big gains that will happen later on down the line. And so I think we're going to see another move up on altcoins. That's true. And I'll try and take part in that as best I can, but not with an enormous amount of cash, because my expectation is that we'll come back down to earth and we will reaccumulate at a lower level, where we will then at that stage get back into altcoins and enjoy the much larger gains that get given to us. Maybe later on this year, if not 2025. So that's the main plan. The plan hasn't changed. It's still the same, but it doesn't mean you can't take part in any sort of pump that is handed to us at the moment. Because there are signs that we're going to get continuation on altcoins, and it would be rude not to enjoy that, really, if they're being handed to us so easily. So long story short, we could bounce from here. I don't think we will. I think we'll have a pullback. I think 49,700 is going to be the absolute low on this pullback, and that pullback should get bought in the form of altcoins. Not all, but some. Anyway, long rambling video. Hopefully there was some lessons in there, some tidbits. And if you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Other than that, hope you have a nice day. Take it easy.